He fronted court today and was refused bail.
OK, Maddie, thank you.
Indeed. Reporter Madison Scott getting the fright of her life on 9 News Sydney last Thursday. Hello, I'm radio and television producer-presenter Rob McKnight. With over 30 years' experience, this is Media McKnight, and it's good to be back. And it wasn't just 9 News dealing with unintended moments during its news broadcast. BBC Scotland's bulletin was interrupted when it suddenly went live to the studio getting ready for the next show, The One Show.
And Central Station in Glasgow partially reopens after the building next to it was destroyed by fire.
Like Kathy off EastEnders, but back in the day.
We're all messing about.
That's true.
It's just like a nice...
Do you know what?
Okay.
What would be worse is if we didn't speak at all. Exactly. Do you know what I mean?
We were just having a chattering Wednesday,
Exactly.
weren't we? And then suddenly we realised.
That's it.
And let me know if you want those tightening up.
Yeah, time went fast.
It really did. And we were talking about important things about health and exercise.
Well, yeah, and we sorted that out, so that's important.
Oh, they are so lucky. No swearing and inane conversation. They must know the golden rule. Do not swear in a studio even when you're not going out. But look, it didn't end there. The supposedly private conversation on the One Show set continued for another 24 seconds before crossing back to the news.
Paul, is there any chance somebody could grab my phone?
Okay. Yes. Hear me.
No, you don't need to go down. Somebody be down there already.
Hello.
Alex, shall I come to...
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go, there we go. There we go.
We'll do the
Fab.
first and then we'll get our little video.
All right.
Fabulosa.
Really nice. 3, 2, 1. Beautiful.
And for antibiotics, today came the vaccine.
Let's have a look.
But the gremlins weren't done yet.
Did it hurt?
No, not at all. Literally, you just felt a little lump go in, but more of an uncomfortable feeling than pain.
And now that you know you've got it, do you feel better?
Oh, 100%.
And Carmel Lenado.
Yeah.
Right.
Hang on, who's the other one?
Dougray Scott.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Alex's birthday.
Connaty, like drink tea. Yeah. Right, cool. Connaty. Lovely.
There we are.
Can I? Well, I know they're a bit passé, but they're useful. A selfie stick.
Okay.
Just because.
Yes.
I've
Because
got
of the
a short
armage.
arm. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Did we film it for you today?
Oh yeah.
There we go. I think we got. Oh no, there's a crazy shadow. Actually, can you do it? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
It is a bit awkward.
Do you know what I
isn't
mean? Because Vernon Kay is literally like 7 foot tall. So he's like
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's really nice, guys. In 3, 2.
Well, it's all happening today, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's a Wednesday.
It is. We'll do it again. Right, okay. Here we go. Okay.
God.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, it's all happening this Wednesday, isn't it?
It is. We are on the television in about an hour's time, and we have got 3 very brilliant guests. Dougray Scott.
Yes, Carmel Lenado. They're in a great new show called Crookhaven together. The hilarious Roisin Connaughty.
Very good.
And,
and we've got Nikki doing Watchdog.
And also, it's Alex's birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah. Are we going to drink champagne before? No, we're not.
No.
No, not on the BBC.
It'll be a very sober show.
Yeah.
Incredible. Thank you.
Lovely.
They're off school today. Their dad told us he's not sure he'll send them back tomorrow.
So that went all out across Scotland for that amount of time. How does it happen? Well, problems like this happen because of automation. Once upon a time, there would have been a presentation staff member watching over every local feed. That slowly changed over time with one staff member looking after 2 to 5 feeds. Now everything is fed into a computer and one person is left looking after all the regions. And it looks something like this to them.
So let's take a look at that in a little more detail. Saturday, some sunny spells and some warmth. By Sunday, we're going to see some much-needed rain for the gardens. Rita?
Louise, thank you very much. That is BBC News at 10. Now it's time for the news where you are. Good night.
That's a lot of screens to be watching and a lot of content. What's strange in this scenario is they realised there was a problem with the Scotland feed. They got out of the One Show content back to the news, but then it took a long time to get back to the news when it went back to the One Show. Those presenters are lucky. What they were doing, what they were saying was fine. You know, not television fine, but fine to be on television without causing major embarrassment for the BBC. That's the price we pay in the age of automation. You know, we're two people in a studio doing this show. When we do McKnight Tonight Live, we face the problem of gremlins getting into our little system that doesn't have the redundancy of big corporations like the BBC. Geez, when I think about that, I think this little show does all right. Well, there's been yet another twist in the Kyle and Jackie O saga, with Jackie now lodging formal action against their former employer, ARN. I have a bit of exclusive information on this one. We'll get to that in just a moment. Today, the company issued a market update saying Jackie and her company alleged the termination of her contract was a breach of the Fair Work Act. On Friday, Kyle had his first day in court with another hearing set for June. To find out what the latest legal manoeuvres all mean, I'm joined once again by our friend, employment lawyer Michael Byrnes. Michael, welcome to Media McKnight.
Good evening, Rob. Good to be with you.
Good to have you here. Today's announcement regarding Jackie wasn't entirely unexpected, was it?
No, not at all. In fact, people have been wondering, what is Jackie going to do? What legal action is she going to bring? Because she did foreshadow that she was going to, or she was considering her legal options and going to take some action. So it wasn't unexpected at all. And indeed, the nature of the legal action also had been foreshadowed. So it wasn't a particular surprise either.
All right, let's go through what we know about her claim, thanks to that market update from ARN.
Yes.
It summarises the action saying, the applicants claim that the termination of Ms. Henderson's contract constituted adverse action. Ms. Henderson sent a complaint letter to CBC, which noted that Ms. Henderson cannot continue to work with Mr. Kyle Sandilands and made psychosocial health and safety and bullying complaints in relation to the conduct of Mr. Kyle Sandilands on and prior to 20 February 2026. It is alleged that the complaint letter involved the exercise or proposal to exercise workplace rights, and that the contract was terminated because of that exercise or proposed exercise in alleged contravention of Section 340 of the Fair Work Act 2009. It is also alleged the termination of her contract amounted to a repudiation of that agreement. The applicants also claim that ARN's ASX market announcement of 3rd of March 2026, including misleading and deceptive statements under the Australian consumer law. The applicants claim compensation of at least $82,250,000 and payment of pecuniary penalty plus interest and costs. Wowzers. I think I need a drink after that, Michael. What does all that mean?
A lot to absorb there, Rob. So the centrepiece of the claim appears to be an argument that ARN breached the Fair Work Act, and specifically the general protections provisions of the Fair Work Act by terminating her services agreement. And it is
let's be honest, when that came out, all of us sat here and went, hang on, she's made a complaint and she's been fired for making a complaint?
Well, at that stage, it hadn't been confirmed that she had made a complaint. There was talk that she had raised the issue of a lack of safety in the workplace.
Well, actually, in the ASX statement, they said that she had said she cannot work with Mr. Sandilands. So, yes, you're right about not making a complaint.
Yes, so it didn't give any detail about the reasons why she couldn't continue working with Mr. Kyle Sandilands, which is what the statement said. So there hasn't been anything official in relation to Jackie raising safety issues or concerns. This is the first confirmation of it. So she says she made complaints in relation to Kyle's conduct directed towards her, that conduct constituted, she says, a hazard in the workplace, psychosocial hazard in the workplace, or created an unsafe workplace, may have constituted bullying as well, And then she's saying she's made this complaint and her services agreement has been terminated because she made that complaint. And the position is that the Fair Work Act protects the making of certain complaints or raising certain issues, including issues relating to work health and safety in the workplace. And even though Jackie wasn't an employee, she's still what's described as a worker for the purposes of the Work Health and Safety Act, so has certain rights and protections under that act and a right to a safe workplace. So she raised a complaint in relation to Kyle's conduct, said that it created an unsafe workplace, and then this claim asserts that ARN, because she made that complaint, terminated her services agreement. And the contention is, if that is the case, it's a breach of the general protections provisions of the Fair Work Act. The termination of the services agreement is adverse action because she exercised a workplace right, a breach of the general protections provisions of the Fair Work Act.
It's funny, Michael, because that's what it seemed to me from that first ASX statement from ARN, that she put in a complaint or made a statement that she couldn't work with Kyle, whatever that was, and
Yes.
she was terminated. So do me a favour, put your ARN thinking cap on, right? So they would have gone to the lawyers and said, she's put in this complaint, we want out of this contract. Now, I'm hypothesising here. I don't know any of this.
Of course, we are beyond what's in the public domain, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm asking you is, as a lawyer, what is ARN's out of this contract at this stage? If we go back to the termination of Jackie's contract, she said, I can't work with Kyle. How does ARN justify, within their own knowing that this would likely go to court, how do they justify internally terminating her?
Well, ARN, what ARN will presumably argue, and bear in mind they've not put on a defence or anything like that at this stage, and they say they're going to defend the claim, of course. What they will likely do is latch on to the words that she used, that she cannot continue working with Mr. Kyle Sandilands, and they will say that constituted a repudiation of her employment contract because she was either unwilling or unable to continue to provide services as contemplated by that or required by that agreement, and they accepted that repudiation and terminated the agreement. I think that's ARN's position. They might say, well, certainly some issues were raised in relation to safety, but Ms. Henderson indicated that she could no longer continue working with him, and so that was enough to constitute repudiation. Now, we don't know what else might have been said. We don't have the full context, but it seems to me that's what ARN seems to be hanging their hat on. And again, that goes back to the first market statement where they say words to the effect that she gave notice that she cannot continue working with Mr. Kyle Sandilands. Accordingly, ARN has terminated her services agreement.
How does that stack up in Section 340 of the Fair Work Act? Because that's what she is saying, that they have contravened. How does that thinking stack up against Section 340?
Well, it might depend upon the way in which the issue was raised, what was said at the time. That's going to be looked at very, very closely, and whether, in fact, Jackie did exercise a workplace right for the purpose of that provision. That can be quite a technical legal analysis as to whether those particular provisions are enlivened in the circumstances. So that will all need to be examined. You're right, on the face of it, it does seem difficult for ARN to at least avoid a conclusion that what's happened is Jackie has raised safety issues and then ARN have terminated her services agreement hot on the heels of her raising those safety issues. Or alternatively, she's indicated she cannot continue working with Kyle because of these safety issues, and they've latched onto those words, sort of put the safety issues to one side and terminated her services agreement. So,
which is how I saw it at the time, I've got to be honest. But I'm looking at that statement from the 3rd of March. The one
Yes.
thing I'm confused about, I think personally, and I'm not a fancy lawyer like you, but
Not sure I'm a fancy lawyer, Rob, but anyway.
but I do find it interesting. I think she's got a case. I think she's got a much better case than Kyle, and I think Kyle's got a pretty good case. We'll get to him in a moment. But I'm looking at the statement from the 3rd of March, and I'm interested to know what she thinks they have made a false statement by, because
I'm pretty sure I know.
Oh, please tell me.
Well, hasn't she been, I think, only from what she said previously, because wasn't there a statement issued by either her or her manager, or a manager on behalf of her, that disputed that's already disputed that statement? Because part of that statement, Rob, and I don't have it in front of me, but you do, it seems, at the bottom of it, it says something like, we've offered Ms. Henderson the possibility of another show, of other work on the network, or another show on the network. And as I understand it, and of course, ARN have not had their say in this as yet, but as I understand it from what Jackie has said publicly in the statement she issued a few days afterwards, I think it might have been on the Friday, because everyone had assumed she had just sort of resigned or walked away. And she actually said, no, I haven't.
Idiots. I'm sorry, Michael. Idiots thought she had resigned and walked away, because it is really clear in this statement, like the media, when Jackie put out that statement saying, I want to make it clear I did not resign.
Yes.
I went, what's the story here? Because literally,
indeed, because it reconciles that. Yeah, it's consistent with what ARN have said.
It says that in the ASX statement.
Precisely. But back to the part that I think she is asserting is misleading in the statement is the offering of alternative work. In Jackie's statement, I think that same statement.
Yes, it is
Jackie
the same
said
statement.
Something to the effect, as I recall.
That ARN has also offered to Miss Henderson the possibility of an alternative show on the ARN network.
So I think that's the bit that Jackie disputes. As I recall her statement, a few days afterwards, she said, no, I've not been offered the possibility of alternative work. And I think ARN then said, no, she was. So there's obviously some factual dispute there in relation to the statement to the ASX. Interestingly,
but that's huge, isn't it? I mean, your employment's your thing, but making a misleading, or in Jackie's words, misleading and deceptive statement to the ASX, that is huge. You cannot do that.
No, you can't do that. So Jackie, from her perspective, is saying that's a breach of Australian consumer law. It's a misleading and deceptive statement, and that relates to her own individual rights. So that's how she's made it about her individually. But there are also obviously obligations under the ASX listing rules to engage in continuous disclosure, and that disclosure must be completely and entirely accurate. So it's a big claim to make, and as I understand it, ARN did dispute that at the time, and they're going to defend this, and so will no doubt dispute that as well. But you're right, Rob, it is a big claim to make. There's another issue with today's statement, by the way, to the ASX from ARN, a massive issue with the statement. They misspelt Jackie's name.
Oh, hang on. Hang on, I'm pulling that up.
I think in the heading it misspells her name.
Of course I can't find it, but I will find it. They misspelled her name.
I don't think that's an issue for either Jackie or ARN, but for what it's worth, just to show I'm paying attention.
It's worth something.
I don't have attention to detail. There you go. And these things are done very quickly, to be fair, very quickly, because you need to notify the market as soon as practicable. So, they're under pressure in doing these things. Easy for me to look at it in leisure and to be overly pedantic.
Right. I have my mini gavel. It's not the size of it. It's what you do with it.
No, indeed, Rob. And by the way, speaking of pedantry, in Australian courts, we don't use gavels. There's no gavels.
Well, Judge Rob does.
Nice prop, though. It's a nice prop.
Yes. Now, will Jackie win? Put your money on the table. I think she's got a good case. Judge Rob would be ruling in Jackie's favour on this one.
I'm not going to go that far. I think, like like,
You're a
I
lawyer.
think she has a credible, again, on the face of it, she has a credible case.
Yeah.
At this stage, all we've seen is the ASX statement.
Yeah.
That's all we've seen. I haven't seen the pleadings in the federal court. This matter's also in the federal court. In fact, it's in the Fair Work Division of the federal court because it relates to, among other things, she's also claiming wrongful termination of the services agreement, but it claims or asserts breaches of the Fair Work Act, so it's in the Fair Work Division. Rob, on the face of it, again, it seems like a credible claim to me.
Yeah.
It does seem like a claim that could have legs and could ultimately prevail. Again, haven't seen ARN's position. So might look at that and say, hang on a minute, there's some factual parts in the factual scenario here that are going to make it very difficult for Jackie to be successful. But from what I've seen, what I know in the public domain, I think Jackie seems to have a credible, cogent sort of case to run.
I completely agree. Now, we're 15 minutes in already, and we haven't even got to Kyle. Let's turn to Kyle. It's going to be a long episode of Media McKnight, everyone. And we've got more stories to talk about after we get past this. Kyle had his day in court on Friday. Just give us an outline of what happened.
So that was a directions hearing or a case management hearing. In that hearing, it was very interesting, even though it was just a directions hearing or case management hearing. One, Kyle was there. So a lot of theatre outside the court, giving a press conference, holding court. Kyle's been very, very good at the PR battle in this matter. And that was another example of it. In court itself was very interesting because it gave us an insight into the cases on both sides. So in relation to Kyle's case, they say the agreement remains on foot. The agreement remains on foot. It was not validly terminated, and they are seeking specific performance, as in Kyle back on air. And Kyle paid pursuant to the contract. So that's what they're seeking. It's different from what was assumed or what was believed to be the case, but that's what they're seeking. ARN...
Well, why was it different? Because when he did that exclusive interview with me, he just said, I want to get back on air.
No, absolutely. No, that's right. It's different to what was assumed would be the case for this reason. And ARN made this point in their position in court on Friday. That is specific performance, without getting too technical or fancy lawyer on you, Rob, specific performance of personal services, which is what this is fundamentally, is almost never given by a court, never given, as a matter of legal principle. And so Kyle's seeking it. I think that's one aspect of Kyle's case. I'd be stunned, astonished, if a court orders ARN to take Kyle back and give him a microphone.
But he would go back.
Oh, yes, he'd go back. And indeed, it's part of his case that he's ready, willing and able to go back. So what you'll find is Kyle won't turn up anywhere else. Kyle will continue invoicing, I think you'll find.
Yes, and Kyle, apparently he is invoicing like $7 grand a week or something.
Because that's consistent with the contract being on foot. It's consistent with the contract being on foot. Kyle won't appear anywhere else in contravention of the contract. And Kyle will be circumspect, uncharacteristically circumspect about criticising ARN. I think you'll find Kyle will be very, very reluctant to criticise ARN, not because he's not angry or annoyed with ARN, but because he wants to increase his chances of an order for specific performance. So he's doing everything consistent with that. So that's his case. The barrister for ARN, the lawyers for ARN made the point, orders for specific performance of personal services almost never given. Kyle really has no chance of getting an order of that kind. This is really a case about damages. This is a case about damage.
If they've broken the contract and it's found in his favour?
Because courts don't make orders of that kind. So it's just a legal principle, Rob, in relation to the remedy of specific performance. Courts will say, well, two things. One, damages is probably an adequate remedy, but more than that, given the nature of personal services where it would need the court supervision to make it work. There needs to be a degree of mutuality. ARN and Kyle would have to work together. It's just not an order that courts generally make
Okay.
for personal services. I'll give you an example or a counterfactual. Let's suppose none of this happened, but on 20 February, Kyle walked out. So there wasn't an argument between Kyle and Jackie O, that management did something, or Kyle just got annoyed or had enough and just got up and walked out of KISS and hasn't come back since. Let's assume that as a factual scenario. If ARN went to court and sued Kyle, as they probably would, or they almost certainly would, well, actually, if you believe the theory that
in this scenario, they'd probably say fine.
in the ordinary course, yes. In the ordinary course, they sue Kyle and they say to the court, we want specific performance. We want Kyle to turn up on Monday and do the show. The court, or Kyle's lawyers and the court would say, no, you can't force Kyle back on air. You can sue him for damages for the loss that you've suffered by virtue of him not fulfilling the promises and obligations in the contract, but you can't force him on air because that's a form of servitude. That's a form of, indenture sort of thing, or it's against personal freedom and liberty to do that. And similarly, ARN are highly unlikely to be forced to take Kyle back. This is the position of ARN's barrister. And you might recall it reflects my earlier analysis of the matter, where I said this is really going to be a case about damages.
You always said that.
I think ARN had the much stronger position there, much stronger. That's not to say Kyle's going to lose, because I think Kyle could potentially win a very big damages award if he makes good the proposition he didn't engage in serious misconduct as defined or as constituted under the services agreement. But as for getting back on air, I think that's a very questionable proposition. But Kyle is doing everything consistent with the agreement being on foot and giving himself the best chance to get back on air, including evidence about how with each passing day, his standing, his profile, his reputation, his audience is diminishing. And that was one of the reasons why the case was brought on a bit earlier than might otherwise be the case as well. If it's just a case about damages, then it can be put off a bit. But given this relief that they're seeking, specific performance, the way in which it is alleged Kyle's or asserted Kyle's standing is diminished with each passing day, that gave a bit of an imperative to the court to have the matter listed earlier. And so it's been listed, Rob, for June. Starting 5 days on 22 June, we will know ARN's position in late April. So Kyle's lawyers have been told to put on what's called a statement of claim, which is a more detailed, particularised pleading document. You might recall there was the concise statement, and this is going to be a more technical, particularised, detailed document, and then ARN will have a brief opportunity to then file their response to that statement of claim, or their defence to that statement of claim, where they will set out their position. We'll understand what their case theory is, and it's been tentatively set down for hearing 5 days beginning on 22 June.
Where we could actually see Media McKnight played in the courtroom, that interview with Kyle.
Well, you might actually, Rob. You might. And it's interesting because when you spoke to, well, initially Bruno and then to Kyle was very adamant. And I think this was the night, this was the eve of the termination.
The night before, it was the night he was finding out whether his contract was going to be terminated.
That's right. I think he was on his way back from Rudy Hill and Australian Idol with Bruno in the car. And he made it clear he wants to return to air, and he expected the contract to be honoured. And I think in that he also described any termination would be invalid. So he's been completely consistent in his position. He'll remain consistent in his position. He'll be advised to be consistent in that position, to keep on invoicing.
But I genuinely think it's what he believes. I don't think, I mean, obviously he's got lawyers talking to him, but Kyle will do his own thing. I think in his heart of hearts, his position is they employed me, they had a contract with me to do a job, and I want to do that job. And he actually said in that interview, it was the same chairman who signed that deal. It's the same chairman who's trying to get rid of me. I just want him to honour the contract. And I found that to be a very interesting statement.
I do wonder whether this legal strategy is driven, and there's no criticism of anyone here, driven by Kyle, where the lawyers may say, if I was acting for Kyle, I would say, Kyle, I know you want to be on air. I know you really want to be back on air doing your thing, but orders for specific performance, they're very hard to get for personal services. That's a real challenge. But I suspect Kyle's saying, and this is speculation, of course.
But I agree with you.
I mean this respectfully to all involved, both Kyle and his very capable legal team, highly capable, is Kyle is saying, look, I want to be back on air. I'm bringing these proceedings. I want to be back on air. If it ends up damages, so be it. But my primary goal here, my primary objective is I want to be on air. I want to be presenting a show with whoever, on my own, with Jackie, with someone else. That's what I want to do because that's what I do. That's my reason for existence.
Yeah.
So the other thing is you won't find...
I want to bring this up before I let you go because there was some interesting info in the media diary section of the Australian on Monday. Steve Jackson, who I know very well, he's very well sourced. He's a reliable journo. He doesn't make things up. But he reported Jackie could be called in to testify against Kyle, saying the company intends to call her in as its star witness. This was before the events of today. Now, the latest action would suggest she wouldn't be cooperating with them, but they can subpoena her, right?
They can subpoena her. They can subpoena her. I really, and I understand what you say about media diary, and I read it religiously every Monday, and it's both interesting and very entertainingly written, if I may say as an aside. It's good fun, really well written. But I wasn't really convinced that Jackie was ever going to be ARN's star witness, which suggests cooperation and giving evidence that would be entirely helpful.
Well, she's not going to cooperate with them now.
Well, I think that view has been vindicated by her bringing these proceedings today. But you're right that she can be subpoenaed. But as a general proposition, Rob, and I want to make this as a general statement, as a general proposition, lawyers are reluctant to subpoena witnesses because ordinarily, if you're calling a witness, you know what it is they're going to say, either because you've had an opportunity to what's called proof the witness, speak to them as to the evidence that they are likely to give, or even better, you've taken an affidavit or a witness statement from them and that's been filed, so you know what it is that they're going to...
Although in this case, they're suggesting, and this story is suggesting, they've got documentation from Jackie outlining dates of alleged bullying and all that kind of stuff.
So it may well be that they are willing to take the risk, because usually it's a risk. But if they've got, to use the modern term, the receipts, the evidence, if they've got Jackie herself making various claims and assertions, then it may well be they're confident in calling her because it'd be difficult for her to then resile from those. And indeed, supporting those might be central to her own case, her own position. So that'd be very interesting. One other interesting aspect is if you go back to ARN's first statement, they said the serious misconduct was all about 20 February. It related to...
You've preempted February. My next question, right?
Oh, sorry, Rob.
No. You and I are so sorry, everyone. I think Michael and I could talk for hours on this stuff. So in their statement of March 18, ARN stated the serious misconduct and breach that was used to terminate Kyle's contract was in relation to the Feb 20 broadcast. And I think this is where you're going. Now,
yes, I am.
I mentioned I have a bit of exclusive info. I have confirmed through my sources this was the reason given in the termination letter to Kyle.
Yeah.
So it's not like they said one thing in the ASX letter and said a whole range of things to Kyle. Yeah. My understanding, and I haven't read it myself.
But no, that makes sense. That rings true entirely.
Yep. So
that rings true entirely.
If they're saying that he was terminated because of the Feb 20 broadcast, so presumably past behaviour, allegations of bullying from Jackie play no part in this.
No,
they can't just change the reason for firing him after they fired him, can they?
Here's the interesting thing. On Friday in court, ARN said they're going to be looking at conduct before 20 February.
Yes.
That left out of me, and I found that very interesting. And Kyle's lawyers were saying, no, this relates to, I think they described it as 20 minutes on air, maybe even a shorter period, on 20 February. So ARN was saying we're going to be going through, we are going to be ventilating matters of conduct or
Wouldn't
alleged
you just be
misconduct.
saying, as Kyle's lawyer, objection, relevance?
Well,
I don't know if that's what they say in Australia. I've watched too many American.
No, there are objections on the basis of relevance, and it depends on the way the cases are framed. And it may well be ARN's case theory has changed from when that statement was, when the serious misconduct letter was issued and when the statement was made.
I'm sure their defence has changed, but haven't they backed themselves into a corner by specifically saying he was terminated?
And that's I think why Kyle's lawyers have said this is a 3-day case and it's in short compass or limited compass about what occurred on 20 February, whereas ARN is saying this is a 10-day case and we are going to look at a range of conduct before, both including 20 February, obviously, but before that, prior conduct as well. Of course, it does beg this question, which is if there were instances of misconduct prior to 20 February, what did ARN do about it? And did they condone it by taking no action? Again, that's entirely speculative. And this exercise is, and I recognise this, somewhat unfair to ARN because we don't have the benefit of ARN's defence at this stage in either case. What we have
and
is
we've made that clear.
They're going to be vigorously defending it, yeah.
Of course. But Judge Rob doesn't see how they have a case, and I've already ruled in favour of Kyle.
Well, I think that might be a denial of procedural fairness. I think you could go off to the Court of Appeal.
I'm the Judge Judy here. Get
respect.
Procedural fairness. Michael, I think we're going to be talking a lot about this. I love our chats. Your insight is brilliant. And
I appreciate it, Rob. It's quite fun.
We're going to have to be chatting daily if this
You have a very engaged audience too. I noticed the comments. I read the comments. Maybe I shouldn't. They say never read the comments, but I read the comments, including the person who said I mispronounced leverage. Apparently it's leverage, not leverage or something, but anyway. So I don't take them to heart, don't worry.
If that's the worst thing you've done, you're doing all right. Believe me, I know.
Always appreciate the invitation, Rob.
Thank you, Michael. We will speak to you soon. Thanks for joining us on Meeting McKnight.
Thank you.
Look, I know that was a long one, but each section was worth around 15 minutes each. There's been so much happening with Kyle and Jackie O since we were last on air, but it's all just happened over the last few days. He is so insightful. He's a great resource to have, and I'm so glad that he joins us for these chats. Moving on, and it looks like Channel 7 has found some new batteries for its 7 News Spotlight program. The network has announced journalist Rani Sadler will be stepping into the role of EP, replacing Gemma Williams, who was installed under Anthony DeSegli, the former news boss. Williams will be the managing editor of 7 News, which seems like a demotion with a newly created title. You don't willingly go from an EP of a network's flagship current affairs show to a middle management role in the newsroom. But what I will say is that this is fantastic news. And I think the future of Spotlight, no pun intended when I say this, is bright. Rani Sadler is a great journalist. She has the credentials to take on this role. She has broken stories. She has covered stories. And moving into this EP role, I don't know what she's like on the creative front, but if she can get those or use the people around her to enhance the show. The thing about Spotlight is, and I declare I've worked on Spotlight, I'm very attached to the show, is that it hasn't just told stories, it's done it in a creative way. Mark Llewellyn, the EP who was the EP of the show, was a great storyteller. I don't know what Rani's like in that, but there are great storytellers from the editors. They can help you craft a story, and there's some great storytellers in the producing team. I really think this shows Ray Cooker, the new news director, is going forward. And even though budgets are tight and money is diminishing, he is really putting his chips on the table with Spotlight, and I applaud him for it. I've got to be honest, I didn't expect Spotlight to survive. I thought, especially with SEA coming in, I expected Spotlight to finish at the end of this financial year, even though 7 had previously told me he was going to go for the full financial year. They had an out, new management. They had a way of dropping the show without too much fuss, but they're not doing that. They actually seem to be increasing the budget, moving forward and wanting to be a challenger to 60 Minutes. And the only way you can do that is by being on 40 weeks per year, not 40 years, although that would be quite an achievement if Spotlight can do that. You need to be on 40 weeks a year, just like 60 Minutes, and you need to be a serious competitor. One of the biggest problems with Spotlight is it's always been a part-time show. Can you hear the excitement in my voice? I really think this is a new future for Spotlight. Rani Sadler, I'm wishing you all the best. And the team, all of you, go forth, because this is great for the industry. 2 current affairs shows for a nation this size, and they can both tell great ripping yarns. TV's back! Well, before we wrap up our longest ever episode, I think it's our longest ever episode, we've got a bit of news. McKnight Tonight is turning 100 episodes on Wednesday night, which is tomorrow night when I record this. And we are looking forward to celebrating 100 episodes from our garage. It's amazing to think Amanda and I do this from our little garage in the suburbs of the Gold Coast, and so many people are taking it on board when we do Media McKnight, and more importantly, McKnight Tonight, because that is the flagship show. What a handsome man. He seems so much younger there. Has it really been 100 episodes? I think I can see it on my face. All right, that brings us to the end of Media McKnight. Thank you for joining us. I hope you can join us for 100 episodes tomorrow night. We will stream live at 9 p.m. at youtube.com/@McKnight Tonight. I'm Rob McKnight. Media McKnight returns next Tuesday at 9 p.m. I'll see you then. Cheers.